Hello, model kit builders. So today we're going to try these out. Alexen Model. They make a lot of different stuff, like license plates for 1/64 scale cars. But in this case, some painting templates for digital camo. Yeah, you cut them out, you tape them on, and you spray over them. Pretty simple. They had different size blocks, by the way, and hexagon camo and all that stuff. But the reason why I bought this one is I'm building this Meng Kids tank of the Chinese main battle tank, and so obviously we're going to try to match that. So you have 15 different templates, and they're meant to be, I believe, taken apart. I guess you could leave some together and just, but ultimately you want to probably overlap some. So what I'm going to plan to do is paint this whole thing green, because the tank is already green, but I've got a lot of nub marks, like on the cannon, for instance. And then I'm going to paint, I guess, that dark color there, and then I'm going to paint the tan last, or vice versa. I don't know, we'll have to see what happens. So, yeah, breaking these apart, just got to fold them until the metal fatigues. They're, I guess, stainless steel. Now, my issue is taping these down. There is not much of a border whatsoever between, it's such a small border. Maybe they did that because you want to get into like corners, like this corner here, right? So that's the only thing I can think of as to why the borders aren't bigger. But it might be tough to get tape to hold these in place firmly, if they're not grabbing the material so much. So we'll have to see how that works out. So here we have a Meng Kids Chinese main battle tank painted up with these things. Obviously it looks like it's a digital camo tank, but you'll take a closer look at it. So the first thing I should have done, and I didn't, is you should sand off the little nubs after you break them apart. I always feel like it would have been smarter if I didn't break apart the sheet at first, and then just painted as much as I could using the whole sheet. The real main issue about using these is there's not much to hold on to. I tried taping it, and then I realized it would take like 17 years if I taped every one of these things down. And then also going around radii would bend it. I actually bent this one to get into a certain area. You can see it's bent. But with all these little floating rectangles or floating squares, it's really hard to make everything flat again. I think it's nice that they're numbered, I guess, but yeah. So the reason why you want to sand off those nubs is because you want to align them all perfectly with the next ones. So if you're trying to get it butt up against an edge, let's see, with butting up against this, sometimes the nub would get in the way and be slightly off and all that stuff. So now this one, because it's around the perimeter, you have a pretty good amount of metal to hold on to. That's basically what I would like to have on all of them. Like, I think it would have been better if it was designed where all the cutouts was really close to two sides. Like, it's pretty close here, it's pretty close here, but it's not remotely close on this side, and it's kind of medium close on that side. That way you could just go in and hold it, like this, and then paint whatever, right? But a lot of them, like this one, they're so short to freestyle without putting masking tape down. It was really difficult. What I would have to do is literally like hold it like this with both fingers and then spray it, right? And then also, if the edges were wider, you wouldn't have overspray. So if you look really tight on this thing, there's a lot of overspray. I've clear coated it, well here, there's like this yellow overspray right there because I was spraying that shape, I guess, or this shape, and it just sprayed over. So yeah, looking at this really close now, thinning the paint is a art in itself. Here the paint was much too thin, or actually what happened is there was an air gap. It was like this, right? And my paint was too thin, so it ran out. It didn't digitize, or if you want to call it that. So the yellow paint of mine I had way too thin. The gray paint I used was pretty much the right consistency, so that's my fault, not really the template's fault. Yeah, the further away the stencil is, it's gonna ghost a bit. I had a stencil just like this suspended in the air, and that's why it's not a crisp edge, because it's ghosting underneath it. Yeah, so for me, what I did is I painted the whole thing this light green, and then I covered it. I used the stencils to do the gray, and then the last stencil was the yellow. But sometimes it was just too big. I had all this whole yellow block was overspray. I wasn't paying attention, and so I had to go back and add a little bit of green on top of that again. So yeah, I just think they could have maybe lost maybe 2 or 3 of these tools and then made all the tools more effective by having more metal to hold on to. I would much rather have less stencils and have them be better and easier to use than have a lot of stencils that are difficult to use. I hope that makes sense, right? So this has a lot of stencils, which is nice, but honestly you don't really need this many stencils in my opinion, because you can hold it in 4 different ways and it'll look different 4 different ways. So you really don't need this many patterns. This is a good one because it's really digitized, but like there's a really big one here that's not very good unless you're going to go back over it with another stencil right in the middle, right? So I would rather not have this at all and just have all of them have more material to hold on to with my fingertips, or just press down with my finger, right? But when I press down with my finger, I'm tend to blocking some of it. So that's my main feedback here. Otherwise, they do work, obviously. If you're, I wasn't very careful. I didn't tape them down at all. I just used my fingers, and I think it looks okay. And I think the large reason, like here, is just the paint wasn't thinned properly. And you might also want to consider using paint retarder so it doesn't dry as fast in certain cases. So you could, well, anyways, that's a different story. Okay, well, I guess I don't know if there's any alternatives. If there are any other alternatives, please leave a comment. I'm not sure if there's I know there's a bigger digital one, I think, but it's made by Alexen also, where the squares are much bigger. But really, I think I don't want paper ones. I've seen paper stencils, but you can't really clean those, right? This thing would build up so much paint on top of it, but they're very easy to clean if you're using acrylic paints at least. I just took them all, stacked them up in my hands, and then did this, so they would basically cut into each other and clean themselves off. So that was really easy. Yeah, but sometimes, I noticed that the paint would get underneath. If I shoot it from this side, it would actually get underneath and leave like a bubble under because my paint was too thin. So I get in the habit of checking the bottom and just swipe it off with your hand before you put it down somewhere else, because if it does have paint on the bottom, you're going to smear paint on the surface of your model, which I did do a couple times before realizing that. Alright, well, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next model kit or model tool related video.